Welcome to Backstage at the Enharmonic. I'm your host, Sean J. Kennedy. Today's guest is Donald Nally, award-winning conductor of the Philadelphia-based chamber choir, The Crossing. Donald is also director of choral organizations at Northwestern University and chorus master of the Chicago Bach Project. I was privileged to be a member of Donald's choirs while I was an undergraduate student in the early to mid-90s at Westchester University. I also was able to arrange and perform as a percussionist with various ensembles that he led in the Philadelphia area. As always, whether you're listening to Donald perform or just chatting with him, it's always a riveting experience.
Hi, Donald, are you there?
I am.
Hey, great to speak with you, and thanks for taking some time to be on my podcast called Backstage at the Enharmonic.
Thank you for asking me, Sean.
So I start with the same question with all of my guests, and I go back to the very beginning. Could you tell us about your earliest recollection of music?
No, because I don't know exactly which one is like the earliest. So no. The answer is no. But I'll tell you what my earliest kind of context that I remember. So my parents, my father played piano by ear, and he played a lot of boogie woogie, and that was in the house. But that was about the only kind of performed music in the house, because otherwise my father didn't read music and my mother wasn't a musician, and so what was in the house was a lot of Glenn Miller and John Philip Sousa albums, and I remember when we got our first stereo and playing those big LPs, and that's what they listened to, and some Perry Como and stuff like that. And at the same time, when I was a little kid at church, I went to this church that was really very interesting, small, tiny country church out in Bedminster, Pennsylvania, but it was always had young pastors that had just completed or were, recently out of Princeton Seminary, and they were really interesting, and the whole church was really liberal, and the church was full of artists and intellectuals that lived in Upper Bucks County, and they really opened a huge world to me, including music, because this tiny little choir would do like big, huge Randall Thompson pieces and stuff like that, which at the time seemed enormous, and so that's kind of like the combination of all of those things are I think the kind of foundation of the weird trajectory that then I call my life. So.
Excellent. Now, we've known each other for quite some time now, of course, and I remember that you had mentioned you were an active instrumentalist growing up. I think you played saxophone and viola. Before saxophone and viola, did you take any formal piano lessons or voice instruction, anything like that? Like, I'm just trying to put all the pieces together. Where did the voice fit into this? Like, what was first?
So, yeah, I mean, when I was little, I sang in the school choir, and I think I sang with church children's choir. And in fourth grade, I took 6 months of piano lessons, but my parents said they couldn't afford to do both piano and saxophone, and I really, really wanted to play saxophone. So I dropped piano, probably the biggest mistake of my entire life, and studied saxophone really seriously for all of my pre-college years. And I even entered college as a saxophone major, but I didn't stay in that major very long because I had been singing really in that final year of being a senior in high school. I'd really grabbed onto singing. I had a really strong, really inspirational choral director in that I only sang in the choir in junior high and high school. I only sang in my in my last year, my 12th year. And this guy was great, and he really had a big influence on me. And then his name is Larry Bachtel, and and so I started, and I sang in the lead in musicals then, and I just went, wow, I really like this. And I also knew I wanted to be a conductor. Something that in high school started churning in me and going. Actually, I started in junior high. I remember having a disastrous audition to be student conductor, even when I think I was in 7th grade, and that was always there. And so voice seemed like a more logical thing for me to do in university, so that I could balance that with choral conducting, because that's really where my heart lay at the time. It actually is interesting because that instrumental background, and you're right, so viola too, horrendous violas, but nevertheless played it for like 8 years. That all informs so much of what I do today. All that instrumental stuff really has a huge influence on the way in which I make music. But yeah, I kind of went the vocal track when I got to university.
Going up until the end of high school, you had aspirations. Was it to be a professional saxophone performer or performer/teacher? Where was your mind in 10th grade as far as the saxophone went?
Oh, I was going to be the greatest purveyor of French classical saxophone literature and contemporary saxophone literature. I was going to be great.
Wow.
Which is really funny when you think about it, because name all of those saxophonists who are renowned for their approach to the French literature and also contemporary literature. Let's just stop for a second and I'll let you name them. Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. I have no idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I really love the saxophone, man. I do. And it's really funny because we've done a couple of projects with Prism, the saxophone quartet, and I'm good friends with Tim McAllister, who is now on the faculty of Michigan but was on the faculty of Northwestern with me, and now Tamer Sullivan, who's in Prism, is on the faculty of Northwestern with me, and we're good friends. And it's all come around, in this strange way, but there was this whole 25-year gap of no saxophone.
Wow, I never knew about that. So
yeah.
As you were speaking, I was writing notes, to follow up with things you said, and my first question was going to be, so your syncopation and your rhythmic drive, I've seen you conducting, that must come from all of your jazz saxophone playing, but you went somewhere else with your saxophone.
I did. I played in the jazz band, I really liked it, and I assumed at some point, in 10th grade, that I was going to be this great jazz band conductor in high school, literally, there was, I entered college probably thinking still in the back of my mind that was a possibility. And, I made the switch to voice because of conducting, but I also made the switch, quite frankly, because I had not a very good saxophone teacher my first year there. And it really, it's funny, if I think about it, if I had a killer saxophone my first year at college, my whole life might look completely differently. But the first several lessons I had with this person, I just went, this is not going to work. There's no way this person's going to teach me saxophone. And it's funny because then the second year that person went on sabbatical, and they did get a guy that had just finished his doctorate at Indiana, and he was fantastic, and I loved studying with him. But the whole course of my life had already taken a complete left turn. So,
wow.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah,
yeah. If I had that, if I think his name was Richard Crittenden. I'm trying to think, sort of remembering this, and he was great. And if he had been at college my first year, we may not be having this conversation today.
You said early on you had aspirations to be a conductor. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you not the drum major for the high school marching band?
No, I was not, actually. I was the...
Oh, you weren't?
No, I was the assistant conductor. There's a difference. So in my high school, we had, the drum major guy who did the field work, and then we had an assistant conductor who did helped with musical preparation and then conducted something on the big concert in the springtime. So there was a kind of different. I think you had to be, I think to be the drum major, you had to be like spectacularly good looking and a great personality, and to be the assistant conductor, you just kind of had to be talented. So,
all right,
I'll take
cool.
talented.
Right. Yes, I like it. So here's another question that I ask all of my guests. It might be unusual, but do you listen to music for pleasure?
Almost never. Partly because there isn't really any time for it. And hasn't been for a long time. And when I'm listening to music, I'm usually listening to pieces that people have sent me, or pieces that an assistant has said, here's something that you need to know about, get to know this in order to like stay on top of stuff. But I don't listen to music at all. I most often don't listen to music when I have like non-rehearsal time, just because there's just so much music in my life. I need the silence. So no, I'm not like we can't have a conversation right now about like, well, what kind of music do you listen to? Because I don't, I do play music at home. My partner and I play music at home when we'll have like a dinner party or something like that, and it's always some sort of like Nina Simone or Morgana King or something like, or Gaetano Veloso or something, some kind of like just interesting, gritty music, lyrics, and etc.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of my the guests that I've had on have had similar answers to that. It's almost like research-based listening always. It's like I have to.
Yeah, research-based listening. Yeah, but there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So here's another one. Outside of music, do you have any activities or passions that you do away from music?
Is there anything that's outside of music? I wasn't aware.
Exactly.
No, I mean, besides like, going running or, hiking, on the occasion that I can carve out some time to do that, I don't see the need. Like, I don't apologize for the fact that my life is singularly focused. It's great, and it's really rich and satisfying. So, no.
Excellent. Okay, good. Now, you're based in Chicago full-time, and you're back and forth to Philly for the crossing. Like, how often are you in Philly and Chicago, like, percentage-wise?
So, I'm in Philly like a collective 6 months out of the year. That's added. Those are days that are added up. I know this because of my taxes, actually. Those are days that are added up from weekends or full weeks or 10 days, or like right now I'm here for 6 weeks. I go away for 3 weeks and come back for 4 weeks. And then, so when you add it all up, it adds up to just about 6 months. But, because of my role at Northwestern, an awful lot of that is Saturday and Sunday, leaving early on Saturday morning, starting a rehearsal at noon, having a couple of rehearsals on Saturday and Sunday, and taking the late flight back on Sunday night.
Looking back at your pre-college days.
I'm old, Sean. I don't know if I remember any of that. So,
all right. Your pre-college days, was there a moment that you're like, I wanted to be a professional musician?
Well, again, I don't. But because it's so. I was so like, I have had this love affair with the saxophone. I would sometimes sleep with it, and I would hug it and hold it, and it's like, everybody has complex childhoods, and they have their own. Everybody has their own thing about their childhood that they carry around with them for the rest of their life. And mine was also fairly complex. And the saxophone provided this friend that I turned to all the time, particularly at home, where I would just go to my room and play, and I loved it. So it's not so much like, oh man, I want to be a professional musician. It was more like, this is what I do. Like, that's how I identify in every way. I make as much music as I can, and I play in every ensemble I can get near, because that's where I feel like I'm myself, and the rest of the time I feel a little bit lost. And I kind of realized it, that's sort of what was going on. And, I've thought a lot about it, and I've written about it. You asked me earlier about, like, other stuff I do. I do a lot of writing, and I do enjoy writing a lot. So I've written a lot about this, about, like, sort of music that somehow irons out the chaos and, makes a gap between the conscious and subconscious. And I think that's a very real experience for me, and a visceral one, in my pre-college days. So I wouldn't say there was this moment when I want to be a professional musician. And if you at all said that I was going to wind up doing like what I'm doing now, or even like working at a major international opera company, I would have gone like, that's ridiculous. That's silly. And I have a degree in voice and music education from CCM, and there was I come from a background where that was what I was going to do, was be a teacher. So I don't think there was a kind of like light bulb that went, yeah, you're going to be a pro.
Okay, great.
Which I should also clarify that I consider many music educators to be like total pros. Like I don't want to. There's not a line between those two things. Some of the best musicians and artists I know teach, and they teach in all kinds of situations: children's choirs, high schools, colleges, whatever.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's always interesting talking to the different folks I've had on, because some people are like, on August 5th, 1961, I remember, and they're like, that's when I wanted to, whatever. And then about half of them are what you are. It's like, I've already done it, I can't imagine myself doing something else, and I am a musician, I didn't become one type of thing. So it's always interesting to hear people's recollections of their upbringing and how they became and continued with music. So that was a great answer.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked with me. I mean, you've sung with me, and you played for me and with me, and I think you can see like that. That's like when we start doing that. That's when I become me. That's where
I love that answer. Yeah. That was great. Yeah, I love that one thing you said there about you feel most like yourself when you're performing, and I think a lot of us musicians are that way. So
yeah, and the other thing about it is, and I think you relate to this very well from what I know about you as a musician, because it's so fluid in and out of actually doing it, that it isn't performing for me. I never feel like I'm performing. I feel like I open the doors and so that people can share with me kind of what's going on with me right now. I never look at it like, I don't look at it, and I've like dispensed with most of the things in my life that would give the feeling that it is a big performance, such as tuxedos and a specific idea about the way in which a choir acts and all that kind of stuff. And I've dispensed with a lot of that stuff because it just isn't important to me.
Have you had like a pinch yourself moment where you're like, wow, from my humble upbringings in rural Pennsylvania, I can't believe that I'm standing here right now doing this?
So now that's the opposite answer, because that happens to me daily, and there are many standout moments that I going way back when I was at CCM, I was in a choir. I was in the choir there that sang. Went to New Orleans and joined a bunch of other choirs and sang Mrs. Lemons with Robert Shaw, and that was the first time I had worked with Shaw. And it wound up later in my life that I worked much more intimately with him. But that was a moment where I went, wow, I really want to do that. I thought I did, but that's definitely that. And also, what am I doing here? What am I doing here in New Orleans? Singing this piece with the Atlanta Symphony. There was a moment when I became chorus master at Spoleto, and I was standing in the back of the theater, and I remember this very specifically. It was a dress rehearsal for Meistersinger, and they were playing the overture, and I just went, I can't believe I'm in another country at a major festival being the chorus master for, you know, one of the great works of the Western world. You know, there was, when I was at Westminster, you know, being on stage with Bernstein conducting his Mahler 2, that was the second Deutsche Grammophon recording, and I was the manager for the choir because that was my graduate assistantship, and just like watching him work and going, oh my God, I am taking so much information in right now, you know. But then there's all sorts of, I mean, you know, there's all sorts of other things. The Crossing, which is my choir here in Philadelphia, we just finished this project called Seven Responses, and it was I invited 7 composers to write contemporary responses to Buxtehude's cantata Membri Jesu Nostri. I had that experience last weekend. I mean, I stood there going, I can't believe that David T. Little and Luce Bratton and Anna Thorstwaldstottir and Caroline Shaw and et cetera, have written these pieces of music that my little choir is doing. You know, we're talking at Carnegie Hall right now about something. We've been, you know, like doing Sela, the world premiere of John Luther Adams' Sela in the wading pool outside on the Hearst Plaza at Lincoln Center as part of Mostly Mozart. You know, I'm standing there going like, what am I doing standing here in New York with, you know, thousands of people around in this environmental piece, and they came and asked us to do this. So I really, you know, every day is a kind of complete miracle to me based on the question that or in reference to the question that you just asked. Is there a time when I pinch myself and go, God, from my humble beginnings, and it happens constantly. I'm a very, very grateful person.
Standing. Well, I'm grateful too to have you as a friend and a former teacher and mentor, and I really appreciate everything you've done for me. Thanks for taking time to talk to me on my little podcast here, and I hope to get together with you soon and catch up on old times.
I would love that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Donald.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Today's soundtrack featured excerpts from The Crossing and the Prism Saxophone Quartet. To find out more about Donald Nally and the Crossing Choir, please visit them online at crossingchoir.com.